Back at it here with the Red Gold and Bold podcast, proudly brought to you by, and easily said by me, proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, now hiring for all positions. Check them out online at GannAsphalt.com if you want to be a part of one of the fastest growing companies in KC. Much to get to today on the Red Gold and Bold. Chris Jones, it's official. No shows mini camp. What does it mean? When does the absence become a problem? What is the next step? We'll talk about that. Frank Clark is in Denver. Is that a problem? I don't think so. What will George Karlaftis be moving forward? He talked to the media today as we record here. If you're catching us live on the stream, you know it's Tuesday about 8 p.m. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation. Already a number of people in the chat room firing around. You can be a part of it. Again, on Tuesday, George Karlaftis talked. What is he going to be? Big finish. Does that carry over? How much longer can Travis Kelce play? He talked about what it takes for him to play at age 33. Will Clyde Edwards-Helaire make this team? Should he make this team? We talk about it all here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadilla, Eric Eager, and Seren Petro. Jeff Chadilla is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Seren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions. Project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience. With paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadilla, Eric Eager, and Seren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Curtis Siebold, always happy to join us for the open. And then he bails. I don't understand why he does it every week, but that's just how the man operates. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Jeff Chadilla, NFL Network, Eric Eager, Sumer Sports. My name is Seren Petro. And let's start right with it. I think people wondered about this. I don't think it's a complete shock, Jeff. But Chris Jones does officially no-show minicamp. So the holdout is on, I guess, or do we not go that far when it's just a 3-day mini camp? Where do you sit on this one?
I don't know if it's on just yet. It's, there's a price to be paid for missing mini camp because he is under contract. A bigger price to be paid once you get into training camp. And really, I mean, players in this position have very few resources when it comes to trying to apply pressure points to teams. I mean, the Chiefs understand that if he wants to sit out, he's going to lose money. And I understand it's really important for them to get a deal done with him, to lock him up, because it gives them some salary cap flexibility and gives him some security. You don't have to worry about this for another 3 or 4 years. But ultimately, it feels like, there's certainly an impasse here, an expectation. We've talked about what someone like Chris Jones would want, given what Aaron Donald's been paid, a lot of defensive tackles have gotten paid throughout this offseason in the last year or two. But the Chiefs also are trying to be very prudent about their financial decisions. And this always felt like it was going to be a lot more complicated than we thought. I know Chris Jones has said he wants to be a Chief for life, but once you actually start hearing the numbers coming from the Chiefs, maybe it's harder to make those kind of statements. So I think ultimately it will get done, but I'm not surprised it's where it is.
Yeah. Eric, what do you think about the fact that he's not there right now? And let's start talking about when it becomes a problem. You need to unmute yourself, Eric.
Sorry, my
smartest, the guy with the most degrees can't figure out the mute button.
It was Yeah. Good start, though.
All right. I was just going to give him that secondary mute here. It's not a problem yet, but it's certainly an issue, right? Like Jones kind of got wrapped up around, this time, a little bit in 2020. 2020, they had a similar amount of cap space, a similar amount of investment, although they didn't really go out and get somebody like Jawan Taylor that year. I think that all the things that Jeff said are right. Like there's fines now that are pretty onerous for players. Like the only players that can really sit out training camp are veterans that have a ton of money, which Jones does, or players on the franchise tag that haven't signed the deal, like Orlando Brown last year. Everybody else is subject to incredible fines. And I think that kind of curbs this a little bit. Will they? I know you were talking to Sam on your show yesterday. Thought it was great. I mean, the idea is like they're in win now mode. They're going to be in win now mode, with Patrick Mahomes for quite some time. And trading him after the draft doesn't make as much sense to a team like that as a team that's rebuilding. That being said, this team has not over the last two off seasons really pushed the chips in the middle the same way that other teams like Buffalo has. No ficus tree today. I'm back in Georgia. My office is still not ready, so I'm still just sitting here watching my hometown dream against the Liberty.
So you're not. Can you confirm for Cam you're not in the shower?
I got to get my camera. Yeah, you're right. I got to get my good camera. This one's not quite as it doesn't do me justice, frankly. But yeah, I think that this is a weird pivot point for the Chiefs, right? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand the fact that this team doesn't necessarily want to back up the truck again and put a lot of money into this team beyond what they've already done, which is Jawan Taylor and company. Some small scale free agents as well.
Yeah. Listen, I put out a poll. When do you become concerned? I put it out on Twitter and gave 4 choices right now. When training camp starts, after the first preseason game, after the third preseason game, 10% said right now. So not a lot of people real concerned. And there's pretty much 30 on the other 3. Camp starts, first preseason game, third preseason game. Jeff, when do you think for a player who will be 29 years old, when does he need to be in camp? Because we don't see it as much because we don't see as many holdouts. There's so many things that have changed. Like back in the day, you remember in the 80s and 90s, there was the cap had all these, just about every high draft pick held out for 3-4 weeks into camp, and we had all this data that when guys hold out they get hurt. At 29 years old, he keeps himself in great shape. But there's a difference between football shape and workout shape. When do you get concerned that Chris Jones isn't in camp? What's the date you would say, okay, this is where they've got a problem?
Well, how you define concern? I mean, is it like him not wanting to be a Chief, him getting sideways with the organization, him not being able to play at a high level? Like, what's the concern?
I would say there's 2. There's one, there's that okay, this relationship has gone south, and then there's also okay, well, it's going to get done eventually, but I'm concerned that he's going to come out and get hurt in week 3. I mean, guys who have pronounced holdouts oftentimes end up hurt. I mean, we've even seen it with guys who don't play in the preseason. That's been a theme. That's one of the things we've talked about in previous years. The teams that play their guys in the preseason seem to be healthier than the guys who don't. Now, I don't have any medical data in front of me. Eric, maybe you've tracked that or something. But, a rule of thumb I know in the old days was if you missed most of camp, you were a lot more likely to end up getting hurt.
Yeah.
Well, back before free agency, those players, so a lot of players would go into the season without a contract, and then they'd hold out and then they'd sign the week. And this was back when they played in the preseason a lot, and there were 6 preseason games at times, and then there were 4, but the starters played a ton. These players would come in and they wouldn't sign their deal, but they weren't free to go with another team because there's no such thing as unrestricted free agency. So it was really this, back then. I mean, it was a grind. We don't see it nearly as much anymore. To your point about draft picks, you had Bryant McKinney sat out the first half of his rookie year. You had, you had Joey Galloway the one year with the Seahawks sat out his half a season. It just doesn't happen as much anymore because these teams generally get a resolution unless it's a franchise tag thing like Le'Veon Bell.
So I'll ask you again, Jeff. When do you get concerned?
I think if they're not able to reach a deal, Chris Jones is playing football this year. because he's still under contract and he's still getting a pretty sizable deal. I'm not going to be concerned about training camp holdouts because I don't think they accomplish anything anymore. And so for me to sit here and say, oh, he's not here in week 1 or week 2 of training camp, like, okay, well, he's still going to be there in week 1 unless he gets to a place like Trent Williams got with Washington, where it was just so acrimonious and he was like, screw it, I'm getting out of here. You're going to have to deal me. Now, I don't see it getting to that point, but I also feel like what Eric said is true, that I think we underestimate how much the Chiefs want to be fiscally responsible. They haven't paid anybody outside of Travis Kelce.
And Jawan Taylor.
I mean, over the age of 30. I'm talking about someone who's close to the end of their career. And so and they know Chris Jones is. And so there's a very good likelihood that they could sign him to a big deal and Chris Jones could underperform for the rest of that deal. And that's not a good thing for them. So I think he's playing this year. I can't tell you what that number is going to be that he's playing on if he's going to have a new deal, but I'm not concerned about him as in training camp. I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I think he's walking on a $500,000 workout bonus. I assume he's not checking that box either. If he's not in a mini camp, he's due $19.5 million. So there's $19.5 million reasons to come on in if they can't get a deal done. It will be ages 29, 30, and 31 though, Eric. I mean, that's not ancient. It was just getting started for Reggie White. I'm not trying to say that Chris Jones is Reggie White, but the sack numbers for a defensive tackle, I mean, it's like Aaron Donald. I mean, J.J. Watt moved outside pretty early. Reggie, I mean, like he's
Reggie is a similar body type to Chris Jones.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The hard part about this is you're absolutely right. The age curve for defensive linemen is weird because if you survive to a certain age, generally speaking, you will with old man's because look, as you get older, like all the stuff that made you what you are now, Jones is incredibly quick. He's fat, he doesn't have a weakness really as a player, especially this year now. You're looking at almost 1,000 snaps. Early in his career, he was a guy who couldn't play the whole game a lot. That was his weakness. He kind of shored that up last year. But you think about this league is cycling through offensive linemen who are young, getting younger and younger and younger and weaker and weaker and weaker. And, that's how guys like Calais Campbell and Justin Houston and guys who, can live out longer careers. I think that the tough part for Jones is, and you said you guys talked about this yesterday on your show, it's like Jones is like hitting that like in better shape part of his career like right now. I mean, he was, not the most well taken care of player early in his career. He seems to have turned that around. I guess the question is how much of that was because he knew he was going to get a new payday and how much of that was truly him on the ascension. We've seen Jones have kind of an oscillatory career from a production standpoint. The bottoms of the troughs have always been really good. The tops have been phenomenal, best in the league, really. But how consistent are you? Because when you pay a lot of money for a veteran player, you're buying into consistency in addition to the high-end ability.
Let me put some context into what I said about Reggie White. I mean, and I do think, Reggie White was listed at 6'5", 291. Chris Jones is 6'6", 295 that they list him at. I mean, there is that similarity there. But just to be clear, Chris Jones, age 24 to 28, because before age 24, Reggie White was playing for the Memphis Showboats. I don't have those numbers handy, and I don't think
he has the all-time record for USFL sacks, I believe, in a season.
I will start by saying, I know you're going to do this. He's not Reggie White.
I know, and
that's all
I'm going to prove it.
I'm
going to prove it. I'm going to prove it.
Well, people remember Reggie. I think his point is people remember Reggie's Green Bay years, but that was, people forget that was the tail end of his career. Like he had 22 and a half sacks, I think, 22 sacks, 21 sacks in that 12-game 87 season that was shortened. Like the guy had 2 Hall of Fame careers, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, so let me give the numbers. Chris Jones, from ages 24, I picked the same ages because Reggie White didn't get to the NFL until he was 24 because, like we said, he was in the USFL. So, to where they are now, like where Reggie White was now. So, like, if we can project ahead what Chris Jones would be based upon Reggie White. Chris Jones has played 75 games from age 24 to age 28 and has 56 and a half sacks. Reggie White, from age 24 to 28, played 72 games and had 81 sacks. So 25 more, like basically half again as much as what Chris Jones did. So we're not saying that Chris Jones is Reggie White. But if you did it and you said, okay, let's take 67% of what Reggie White did moving forward, then to Eric's points about the Packer years, he was still in Philadelphia for 3 more years, 29, 30, and 31. He had 14, 15, 14, 13, 8, 12, 8.5, 11, and 16 sacks at age 37 before leaving the game for a year, then coming back and getting 5.5 sacks with the Panthers. I don't think he's going to play as long. I don't think he's going to play as well. But if he's 2/3 of that for 2/3 of the time, that's a guy that you want to get signed, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of them not wanting to sign him. It's a question of what they want to pay him.
Right. But I'm saying the idea that, like, okay, if he's not going to take our number, bah humbug, like we're just going to float him. Like, this is a guy you want to sign. Like,
I think
and you're willing to pay, the going rate for.
I believe if we've learned anything about the Chiefs in the past 18 months, it's that they're at a crossroads as a franchise that wants to continue to be a Super Bowl contender every year. And they learned a lot from letting Tyreek Hill go. Tyreek Hill has way more value to this team than Chris Jones has had. And so they were willing to take that, roll the dice on that. They rolled the dice on Tyrann Mathieu. They rolled the dice back with Mitch Schwartz and Eric Fisher, all these guys that, are very essential to what they've been over the last 5 years. Chris Jones is now in that place. And I think when you start, if you're Brett Veach, you're looking at all these cases and saying, we survived without these guys. We found a way to win without these guys. Mm-hmm. And is Chris Jones at a point where you're saying, yeah, all these numbers sound good, but can we survive without? That's the question they're probably asking themselves. If we can't get the number that we need to get with him, can we survive without him? And I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest they can.
Eric, we're sitting right now looking at Jeffrey Simmons as the second highest paid defensive tackle at $23.5 million, $31.5 million basically for Aaron Donald, with Quinnen Williams sitting out there. We touched on that on our 2 Deep NFL podcast last week, that who should go first. At each team, Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones are probably both waiting on the other one to sign so that they can top that guy at least for second. Based upon that, whatever's going to happen with Quinnen Williams, we'll see. The Jets seem to think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. It hasn't yet. But where should, based upon Jeffrey Simmons, based upon Aaron Donald, where should the number land APY for Chris Jones?
Yeah, I think I would probably put it in that 24 to 26 range. I think he's earned that, like, probably wants it closer, right? But some of these second-tier defensive lineman contracts have been very favorable to the Chiefs. 22 and a half, 23, those kind of numbers, which I think puts Jones more in that 25 range. That's where I think it comes in. I agree with what you guys said on the show Monday on your radio show, that, you want to make it 3 to 4 years. I think the hard part about making 3 to 4 more years, I think the hard part about that, though, is, as we've seen with, like, the Kirk Cousins deal, for example, the shorter the deal, the harder it is for the team to spread the money out, right? And then so they're in a kind of a catch-22. The funny thing is, you look at, Jeff said, it's funny because Jeff was like, oh, they're at a crossroads, and I agree. And yet you look at next year. So you look at 2024, 46 players under roster. Not that bad, actually. 51 million in cap space, and that's assuming, like, this same cap, so it's obviously going to be more. But you look at, like, the top paid players on the team next year, it's obviously Mahomes at 46. That number's probably going to change. And then it's Jawan Taylor, Joe Tooney, Kelce, Justin Reed, Marquez Valdez-Scantling at 14, and then Charles Omenihu at 11.15. But what I find is interesting is there's no one on the Chiefs next year slated to make between 11 million and 5 million. So they're very much like
stars and flags.
They're still a stars and scrubs team. And I think that I do think they're at a crossroads thinking to themselves, do we really want to get ourselves even more barbelled like that, where, like, half the roster's this way, half the roster's this other way, and there's no real middle class here?
Yeah, the idea of trading him too, you have to have somebody who's willing to come and give a lot for Chris Jones. That's part of the equation.
The thing with the Hill thing was, they got a haul. I mean, people are like, oh, but they got a ton of picks. Like 5 picks is a lot of players, and they're, not any one. And the hard part with talking about Jones, like let's say, so Danielle Hunter's up for a trade probably, right? From Minnesota. People are talking about a second round pick. Hunter is a little older than Jones. But they're about similar in terms of value, I think. And people are talking about a second round pick. Would Chiefs fans be happy with the second round pick next year for Chris Jones? I think that's a tougher sell than saying, hey, we're getting a haul of 5 players over the next 2 for Tyreek Hill. That I think is the hard sell for the Chiefs.
Okay, but let's remember, let's not do revisionist history here. And I have a lot of respect for Matt. He's a big follower of our show here. A lot of people here were crying in their milk when Tyreek Hill got traded.
Oh, God. How much grief did we think? We prepped people for an entire season that it was coming, and all we took was grief after grief after grief every single week.
That's why we're the best Chiefs podcast, though. Yeah. Shout out to Steph Kaiser, who was on Twitter objecting to that fact. But, like, we were the ones that said, look, like, this is how it's going to work out, and obviously there's luck associated with it. Petra doesn't believe in luck, but I do. But it was a good move. But yeah, you're right, Jeff. No one was. So that's even like another thing, right? You trade away a superstar player like Hill, and you get multiple big picks, including a first rounder, to go with your current first rounder in that offseason. So you get the immediate gratification. If they were to trade Jones now, which I'm okay with, but like most of the Chiefs fans would be like, wait a sec, we're getting a first rounder or second rounder even next year. And we don't even get to see Chris Jones play this year, also that we can take this cap juice fast now for money. We're never like I don't see it's a tough sell. But they made a tough decision to trade Hill last year for sure.
Thomas said DeForest Buckner was traded for the 13th pick overall in 2019. Yes, and
DeForest Buckner was 5 years younger then.
That's right. That's the point. 4 years younger, and so was Chris Jones. And by the way, they traded for DeForest Buckner and not Chris Jones. Where Chris Jones?
And how did that work out for the Colts? You think if they would have taken a quarterback at 13 there, they might have been better off?
I will say this. I'd have to go back and remember who the quarterbacks were.
It would have been Jordan Love, I think. But whatever.
Okay, but the point here's my point is, I think you have to make the cap work, and then you take what you can get. Like I think the Chiefs will want a big haul. And that may prohibit them from doing what the right thing is. If he digs his heels in and says, I want $30 million and I want it locked in and I want it all guaranteed the way Aaron Donald's was. And it was put very well to me by, I forget who we were talking to out in LA, but they said, listen, part of Aaron Donald's deal is the don't retire money, right? It's not just, here's what we think you're worth. Yeah. It's like he was talking about retiring. So there was a don't retire bonus thrown into it like that, and I think that's an important distinction to make. That's not, you're not trying to defend a Super Bowl championship and keep a guy from retiring. You're trying to defend a Super Bowl championship and the guy's not retiring. And if he wants to retire cap-wise for the Chiefs, that's not the Rams proved that giving all that money to Aaron Donald didn't work. Yeah, like the risk of injury gets higher and they have less money to spread around elsewhere. So I think there are a lot of cautionary tales that are out there that come with this, but we'll see how it plays out. We're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the Kansas City area, entire metro area. Kansas City's nationally recognized full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they disappear when you call Gann. They've been serving Kansas City since 1994 with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews in every project. Coming with a written warranty. Why wouldn't you call right now? Don't let your business's first impression be a horrible, terrible parking lot. Get the best of the business. Gann Asphalt and Concrete to do the work for you. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Frank Clark to Denver. I don't anticipate this taking a long time. Jeff, should this be a concern to the Kansas City Chiefs?
I didn't understand what you don't anticipate it taking a long time. Oh, the conversation.
Well, I don't think we need to discuss it.
Okay,
I can tell you, I'm not going to need much time.
Okay, yeah. No, I think he'll be what he was here. He'll be somebody who, well, I shouldn't say he'll be what he was here because he's making considerably less money. So I think if he can give them any kind of production, it's a benefit. But it's more of a depth move. They're not certain that Randy Gregory can last an entire season. They traded Bradley Chubb. They took the kid from Oklahoma. They got a young pass rush. They're trying to stay relevant on that side of the football. I understand the move. And again, it speaks to just he another player here who I'm sure Brett Veach would love to have made it work with him on that salary, but it was time for him to move on. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be some big boon for the Broncos.
Well, I think it's addition by subtraction to some degree, Eric. Do you think the Chiefs should lose any sleep about him being a Denver Bronco?
No, I think look, Clark was terrible in 2020. He was terrible in 2021 for most of the season. He came on a little bit at the end. For the most part, he was okay this year, especially San Francisco, especially the playoffs. But it was always one of those things where it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is like it's sort of like at work where you have like the boss's kid, or you have like somebody's nephew or whatever. Like Frank Clark was just always there because he had to be, because they made this huge investment in him. And he probably kept some players on that team from developing a little bit. And so now you get to look and say, now Karlaftis is going to play no matter what. Amenahu, Felix as well. Like they're all going to play no matter what, just because of the investments in them. But now you can sort of mix and match and do some things. Because like the one thing I was really disappointed with Clark was, when he was in Seattle, he played for a better defensive line, but he played inside and outside. I thought he was pretty explosive rushing from the 5 and the 3 tech. And he never really did that with the Chiefs. And like I felt like they could do that with him. So I'm glad to see now that they got a guy who's got that inside-outside flexibility, and Amenahu, who's going to have 2 10-sack seasons for the Chiefs. And I think that Karlaftis as well. I think there's going to be there's a lot of benefit from having him gone, because there's going to be some players who I think are going to have an opportunity to step up.
Yeah, I think Frank Clark may have been a little bit of a square peg in a round hole. I mean, he isn't really your prototype Steve Spagnuolo defensive lineman. If I end up being wrong and Frank Clark has 11 sacks and is a difference maker for the Denver Broncos, I think that's what we're going to look back and say is he doesn't fit the scheme here in Kansas City, not the scheme that Spagnuolo wants to run, and it's a better fit in Denver. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. But if it would, that'll be certainly what my conclusion would be. How about George Karlaftis? What to expect from George Karlaftis? I think that is one of the things we can certainly talk about. Listen, he did finish strong. What was it? 6 sacks in his last 7 games, I think, is what we were talking about with George Karlaftis. Let's first hear what he had to say today. He was at the podium and talked about what led to his late season surge.
You just kind of start to figure it out eventually. It starts to click. You have conversations, and it happens at a different time for everyone. Times it got frustrating. But you just keep going. You just keep going forward and put your best foot forward. And
kind of start to figure it out. Eric, does that sound like that certainly wasn't any deep dive into the mind of football and the approach to it, but is it just that simple? You got to get used to the speed of the game, or did he just get lucky? What do you view that last 7 games as?
I think the whole defensive line was playing better too. I thought that the coverage was better, so like guys could get home more. I think a lot of his sacks ended up being plays where one of the rushers got penetration and they moved into him. I also think Spags, you look in that AFC title game, there's a lot of really good blitzes and stuff like that. I thought the scheme helped him a lot, but yeah, I mean, it's good that he was on the field to be one of those players. And he stayed healthy and he kept going for it. I thought that, from a grade standpoint, I don't think he graded that much better. Like I think from, getting off the ball and all that stuff, it was kind of the same, but the defense as a whole got better, and he was there to actually be able to take advantage of it.
What do you think? Is this a guy being launched, Jeff, in your mind?
Well, you were the one who picked him to have 10 sacks, right? Wasn't that your bold prediction?
Yes. I think he's going to be a baller. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think what Eric says is true. Like, I really couldn't remember any sack he had except for the one he got in Cincinnati when it was Joe Burrow giving himself up. But I do think his strength is that he is relentless. He is somebody who's going to be in the right place. He's going to do the right thing. He's not going to freelance. And Eric's right. I think this defense will be judged more off how it moves as a unit as opposed to what its individual parts are. If you start picking it apart, you start seeing, see a whole bunch of Pro Bowl players over there aside from Chris Jones or Nick Bolton. But you do see a lot of guys who can do some things very well. And so when I think about guys who are really dominant pass rushers, I mean, really, the bar is like the Nick Bosa's of the world, right? The Joey Bosa's, Khalil Mack in his day, Von Miller, those kind of guys that just have certain physical traits that George Karlaftis does not have. And let's not forget, George Karlaftis has not played a whole lot of football. Like, he came over here from Greece when he was 14 or whatever, and played a little bit in high school, went to Purdue. Like, he's still learning how to play the game. So I think he's got I think he'll be a good player. I just don't think he'll be a dominant pass rusher ever in his career.
Okay. Would you call Tamba Hali a dominant pass rusher?
Yeah. I mean, he had how many sacks did he have? 80 sacks? 90 sacks in his career?
Close to that, like 80 to 100, I would say, right?
Yeah, he was a Pro Bowl player.
Yeah, but does Pro Bowl player equal dominance?
But I think Tamba Hali.
I just want to know where the line is. That's what I'm trying to establish here.
Well, I think Tamba Hali benefited from playing alongside Justin Houston
and Jared Allen.
Yeah, and so if you get that kind of rusher on the other side of George Karlaftis, the numbers are going to go up. But that guy's not there yet. And even with Chris Jones in the middle, I think you need to have somebody else on the outside who can attract the tackle and create those one-on-one matches that he can exploit.
Real quick, pop quiz. Career high single season sack total for Tamba Hali was what?
11.
14 and a half.
14 and a half is correct. How many times was it? Are you looking at the numbers, Eric?
No, Petro.
That's sake. Just curious. Like, don't you just say I'm
Don't ask a math guy those kind of questions.
Yeah. How many times did he have double-digit sacks? He played from 2006 to 2017. 12 years.
I think it's 5, right?
4. I'd say 4.
3. Okay, so he's just consistently like 8 to 11, right? Or 14.
Yeah, here it is. 8, 7.5, 3, 8.5, 14.5, 12, 9, 11, 6, 6.5, 3.5, 0.
He had a really good year PFF wise in a year where he had just like 6.5 sacks, but he had like a ton of pressures.
So a couple years, he was like one off being a double-digit sack guy a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, 8, 8.5. Yeah, I mean, there were 9. There's 3 that are 8 plus in there. So, listen, I think he was a fine player, but I don't think he was explosive, like an explosive athlete. He's explosive compared to me, right? But I mean, like compared to other edge rushers, he's not Von Miller. He's not Derek Thomas. He was a tactician. He was a technician. He was a guy that was relentless. He got a lot of coverage sacks. He did his job. I think that's a good comparison. I've said it all along. That's been the guy I've compared George Karlaftis to. And give you one more from Karlaftis.
Yeah, but he played most of his career in a 3-4, right?
He played after Herm Edwards in a 3-4. So I think
the bulk of his big sack years came in the 3-4, didn't they? Yeah. So that's different. That's confusion allowing you to get the jump.
I mean, yes.
3-4 ended. 4-3 and 3-4 were starting to blend into the same thing.
They really were. I mean, all passing downs, it was a 2-4 with the nose coming off, and but
Justin Houston was always the edge that dropped into coverage for that team too. Like
just Jesus, don't get us on that one. But I think Tamba Hali's a good comp. This is George Karlaftis today said he did get some pretty good counsel from Tamba Hali in the offseason.
Yeah, just during the offseason you have some time off, and then you kind of get to thinking about different stuff and how you can improve going into your second year, going into the next year. And I knew there were some Chiefs players and guys that have been a part of the organization that live in town. And I just reached out to him just to get some knowledge, and it turned out to be a great relationship. And he's been a great mentor and a great person to me.
I'm music to my ears that he's talking to Tamba Hali. I think that's Tamba Hali, got into the martial arts. Master Kim, I think, was the guy's name that taught him a lot of the hand fighting techniques, and he credited with a lot of things. I mean, just the fact that he's reaching out to somebody, though, is a good sign. And Derek, I mean, it shows that the guy's got a quest to learn and be knowledgeable.
Oh, I think, this team is the culture here is really good, right? I mean, you have players who are trying to improve. One of the things that I kind of was too ahead on or too behind on was like development for this team had not been great for the past couple years, and now it's pretty solid.
Yeah. If the 7 sacks are an indication, or the last 7 games are an indication that Chiefs are in a pretty good spot. We're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, hiring for all positions, project managers, truck drivers, operators, crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, paid time off, insurance. Just to name a couple of the benefits you can get. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more information. Let's talk Travis Kelce here, Jeff. How much longer can he play? Right? Like, that's one of the things I think a lot of people want to know. He's 33 years old. He won't turn 34. I think it's until October, if I'm not mistaken, but it'll be in season before he turns 34 years old. He talked about it. That question came up as to how long he wants to play.
Till the wheels fall off, baby. I love this game, man. I know I'm gonna miss it when I'm done playing, but it's I hear you on that, and that's a business decision I'm sure I'll have to make at some point in my life. But for right now, I'm in this building wanting to win football games, man.
Travis, are you at all impressed with what you're accomplishing at what is considered an advanced football age?
I would say my mentality is always on my worst critic. I can't watch myself on film without just absolutely just telling myself that I suck 90% of the time. There's times where, it's fun and, you make it play, or you get open, or you make a good route, or you make a good block. But at the same time, it's you have to be your own worst critic. You can't sit there on the times that you have success. There's always chances where you can just keep getting better and getting better. And that's just kind of the mentality I've always had in my athletic career, man.
He'll be 34 on October 5th, by the way, Jeff. Last year, 1,338 yards, averaged 12.2 yards per catch. His career average is 12.7. He had 12 touchdowns. That is a career high. How much longer do you think he plays at a high level?
I'm a big Kelce fan. I think he's got at least one good year left at the level he's at. I think he's going to play out his contract with this team that runs through 37, right? 37 years old. But I'll take the numbers. I think the numbers, and I said this before, you look at elite tight ends, most of them around the age 34 or 35 are beginning to decline. And the numbers, whether it's Jason Witten or Tony Gonzalez or Antonio Gates, like you see, and I think I say that because he relies so much on his athleticism. Like, he's such a unique tight end in terms of his quickness and his ability to separate. Like, he's not like Gronk, who can just outmuscle you for, through the end of his career, or even Tony Gonzalez post you up. Like, he's a guy who's going to run routes. He's going to read coverage. He's going to play leverage. He's going to do all these things that get harder as your quickness declines. And so, yeah, I definitely think he'll still be a high-level player this year, but I think after this season, you'll start seeing some of that that rust, some of that aging starting to take effect.
For several years, Eric, you've been talking about how he is slowing down. The production is not, though. How do those two things mutually coexist?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the tracking data from last year, because I switched companies and I had a decent system going there. But I think the big thing this last year was that when they got rid of Tyreek Hill, they engineered an offense that built a lot more space for Kelce. Like in 2021, his yards per target, his total yardage, all that stuff went down because teams were playing so much too high that the middle of the field had to occupy both Kelce and Hill as far as their targets. Last year, when they took Hill out of there and kind of had Watson and Valdez-Scantling running deep, it opened up a lot of space, and that was obviously very good for them. But he's still obviously very good. I do agree with Jeff. I think it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he ages, because he's not like a prototypical, post a guy up tight end. So when his athleticism goes, it won't be, he won't have other things to go back on. He's not a big physical guy. So I'm interested to see how that works. I think Mahomes continuing to evolve and continue to for lack of a better term, Bradyify his game will only serve to help Kelce, though, right? Mahomes being a guy who's going to take the check down much more readily now is a very good sign for the Chiefs.
I like this one. What was it? PFF take all your computers.
Thomas, do you have any idea how any of it? Thomas has no idea how anything works. They literally turned off access to my next gen stats data. Thomas, are you?
Yes.
Like I literally published a paper today that only went up to 2021 because that's what my data feed. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I love about the internet, right? I love this because Thomas can log on here and have an opinion, and it doesn't have like, and he's free to, and he's part of our community. We love him. He's just wrong all the time. It's the American dream.
I believe the only one that doesn't get it is Eric. That's he just lives to get under your skin. Like if he tweets at you, block him. Right? Just block him and just be done with it. You don't have to take it. Okay. Yeah, I don't. This is wait a minute, hang on. Eric on tilt, not yet.
Look. If I have to watch my daughter's corgi walk by me one more time, I'm going to shoot that thing between the eyes. And I'm like generally a fairly tree hugging, animal loving person, but this I don't know. This dog doesn't know what it takes, frankly.
All right, I want to move on.
Podcast.
Let's get to Clyde. I just like actually watching Eric point down. Like clearly he's signaling somebody to move down the hall or get away or something. I've enjoyed that as we've done this podcast. Again, if you catch us via the podcast streaming live, 8p. Usually it's 8p on Tuesdays, Central Time. So keep an eye on our Twitters for that. All right. Well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a disappointment as a first round draft pick. I want to play a couple from Clyde Edwards-Helaire today. This is him talking about how close he came to playing the week of the Super Bowl.
I practiced that week, the whole week. I played receiver that week. I played the Z and the zebra. Pretty much played every position with the exception of quarterback and O-line, throughout practicing through that week. So I was in my mind kind of thinking that I got activated, say like Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. I really don't know. But initially it was just going out there, didn't think I was playing. So started practicing. Coach kind of told me, figure some things out as far as, if you know the playbook, the only guy that I would trust to go out here and try to learn those. I wouldn't even say learn, but the playbook. So in order to keep everything going smooth for the biggest game of the year, why not have you go out there, play receiver, keep everything rolling? And if you're doing that for us on the offense, and I also did scout team. I was Devontae Smith for scout team for the defense. So I did everything that I needed to do in order for us to win that game, and that's just what it was. They called my number, and I was out there.
I'll let Jeff. You want to take just a reaction?
Like no practice squad receivers on this team to go scout team. What the heck's going on?
First thing that comes to your mind after listening to that?
Andrew Hopkins is available.
No, he's talking about from back at the practice.
I know. I'm just not Marcus, wasn't Marcus Kemp like a practice squad elevate guy? Like, was he even on the 53 when he played in the playoffs? Like, I can't remember.
I didn't know if you guys heard the show today, but I played this soundbite and I let Curtis and Adam have a shot at it first. And I just said, listen, here's my reaction. What? What? I don't even know. That's like such a word salad. I don't even know. I don't know what we're
very clearly weren't playing. If they weren't playing you at your normal position, like this it sounded like the dumbest.
And why not have you? And there's no reason for you to play. Why not? I mean, you're playing. You're. Listen, what they were doing was not a positive for your career. Let me just say that. They're not trying to sabotage it, but it's not a statement that like, we can't wait for you to run for 2,400 yards next year, right? Like that's not the mindset that they're in. And I want to go another step further because we had Matt said, do we even he said, do we even care that he missed the parade? Is that a big deal? All right, let's hear what he said. That was brought up today. He was asked about it, why he didn't go to the Super Bowl parade.
Yeah, that was, I want to say probably 3-4 months prior to that, I made an obligation. And I remember laughing with Jet. I was like, man, we're going to win the Super Bowl. Like, what's the point? Why we don't have the parade? Like, possibly on this date scheduled. And I said, it would have been dope, but it's just, I mean, just how I was raised. I'm not going to verbally give somebody my yes or give them that A-OK and then back out on them 2 days before. That's just I wasn't raised on that with how my dad and how my mom is. So if I give somebody my word, that's just in my head now. I remember just keeping a promise in the 3rd grade to this girl, and like to this day, it hasn't left. So it's just one of them things. Like if I stand on it and I tell somebody that I'm going to do it, and I'm going, like, that's just what it is. No matter the obligation, no matter the situation. Having eye contact and telling the person, what you're going to do is what loyalty and trust stands on. So that's what I was on.
I'm going to go first on this one. What the absolute F was that? What was that? And I bring it up, and this is why Matt said, do we even care? This is why I care. Is this? I mean, kind of made an obligation. Kind of. Did you or didn't? I know there's an obligation to the Kansas City Chiefs to play football.
Wow.
Right, which could go all the way to the Super Bowl. And I can tell you that everybody, ask Charles Barkley if he would like to have been at a Super Bowl parade. Ask or at an NBA championship parade. Ask Matt Ryan. Ask anybody who ask Walter Payton how much it meant to play 12 years and for basically bad teams before finally getting a chance to do it. Like, I don't buy this. It's how I was raised. Like, you have a commitment to the Kansas City Chiefs and your teammates, presumably, first and foremost. And let's be clear, he did not go to the bedside of a sickened friend. He was not. Do you guys even know where he was?
I have no idea. What was it?
He was walking a runway at a fashion show in New York, which,
Wow.
Listen, at 5'7" and 200 and some odd pounds, it's not because his future is as a runway model.
It's easier to get a job.
A 3rd grade girl?
Well, and that's the next one. 3rd grade girl. I promise. What?
Yeah.
What? I mean, the reason I think it's of note, Matt, is that it speaks to, I mean, I honestly, I don't think he'll be on this team. I think there's a pretty good chance he's not on the team. I mean, I don't know how you can be sitting there pleased hearing that if you're his teammate, if you're his coaches, like that's no, he threw a tantrum. That's what happened.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to have had that explanation months ago. And I think it is important. I'm trying to think of like how best to answer what Matt asked. Does it matter? It matters in the sense he was a 1st-round pick for this team. After they won a championship, he was a guy with high expectations. He's a guy who's been a class act since he's been here. This is probably the first thing he's done that ruffled feathers outside of just not playing well or being hurt. And so this team is big on chemistry. It's big on culture. And there is, he's one of the first. Tyreek Hill is not here, in part because they felt like he was going to be a problem in the locker room. That was told to me by people in the building. Like, they wanted to pay him, but they also knew if they couldn't get a deal done, they were worried about how it would work out with him. So I agree with you that there's a very good chance that if he's in a place where he just can't get behind what's going on with this team, or if he's going to pout and sulk, that, yes, he's probably not going to be here come September.
Yeah. Eric, it's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a convenient excuse in a situation where, he very. I mean, look, people do that. People do things like that when they're not upfront with it when they know that it's wrong, right? And so, he could have just said, "Look, I'm not happy with the team," and just not gone, and that would have been more respectable than what the excuse he made here.
Yeah. I'm. Listen. Do you know when the next time the 53 guys that won a championship will be together again? That all 53 of them will be together again, which is like the pinnacle of what you play professional sports for. Again, many great players never had the opportunity to experience winning a championship. You know when the next time all 53 of them will be together again?
Reunion?
No, heaven, maybe. They all make it. It'll never happen. It will never happen again. Somebody will have something family-wise. They'll have a child that's getting married, or they will never all be together again. That was the last day that everybody involved with that championship will be there at the same time. Like, as fans, I know what those parades mean to me as a fan. and what it means to other people. I can't even imagine what it would mean for the players who put the time, the effort, the energy, the blood, the sweat, the tears, everything that goes into it, what that would mean and how you could walk away from that. I can't fathom it. I really can't. And maybe that makes me a freak and weird and I'm making too big a deal of it, but I think it's staggering. So,
yeah,
I'm
sure it's very hard for him to go through the career he's had here and look at Joe Burrow or look at Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson and see what they're doing. He was supposed to be that guy. I understand his frustration, why he would be frustrated.
Yeah, I do too. I do understand that. I also understand that if you need any help with your parking lots, Gann Asphalt and Concrete is the best in the business. One contractor, all things parking lot, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. We are done here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. If you're somebody who likes the stream, we're going to be streaming live our sister podcast, the Too Deep NFL podcast, coming up next. You can catch that wherever you get your podcasts as well. So for Jeff Chadia, Eric Eager, my name is Seren Petra saying thank you very much for joining us here on Red